Welcome to the Ask Junior Daily Judgment podcast. I'm Priya Sharma, and joining me today is Arjun Gupta.
Hello, everyone. We're excited to dive into today's important judgments. But before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast if you enjoy our daily legal breakdowns.
That's right. Your support helps us reach more listeners and continue providing in-depth analysis of the latest court decisions. Now let's get started with today's cases. Today, we'll be examining a fascinating case from the Supreme Court of India Ors versus Smimant Chameli and Ors. This case revolves around a complex land dispute, a gift deed, and the interpretation of services within that deed.
This case is especially interesting because it delves into the historical context of land reforms in India and how that context impacts the interpretation of legal agreements. It also brings up some fascinating constitutional questions regarding forced labor and the limitations on conditional gifts.
Let's break down the case. The facts are quite involved, so bear with us as we unravel them. In 1953, Rai Bahadur Randhir Singh, the donor, made an oral gift of land to three brothers, Sanwaliam and Sheochand the Donis. This gift was recorded through a mutation order, which is a legal document that formally recognizes a transfer of property ownership.
This gift was seemingly made in exchange for services to be rendered by the Donis to the donor and his heirs. This is where things get tricky. The gift occurred during a period of significant land reforms in Punjab, when large landowners were redistributing their land due to impending ceiling restrictions under the Punjab Security and Land Tenures Act, 1953.
It's important to understand that this historical context is crucial. Landowners were looking for ways to retain control of their land while technically complying with the law, and gifts were a popular strategy. So, the court had to decipher whether this gift was a genuine exchange of services or a way to circumvent the land ceiling laws.
Exactly. The donor's heirs later challenged the gift, claiming that the Donis had stopped rendering services and therefore the land should revert to them. This suit was filed 45 years after the initial gift and 20 years after the last original Doni's death.
Now, let's talk about the legal questions at the heart of this case. The court had to grapple with several key issues, including: firstly, can an oral gift of land made with conditions of perpetual service be revoked due to alleged non-fulfillment of those conditions? This question raises a fundamental point about the enforceability of indefinite obligations in a gift agreement.
Secondly, is a condition in a gift deed requiring perpetual rendering of services by Donis and their successors legally valid and enforceable? This is where the concept of onerous gifts comes in. An onerous gift is one that comes with a heavy burden or obligation for the recipient.
To illustrate this concept, imagine someone gifting you a car, but requiring you to drive them to the grocery store every day for the rest of your life. That would be considered an onerous gift, and courts are hesitant to uphold such conditions.
The court also had to decide whether the plaintiffs, the donor's heirs, successfully discharged their burden of proving specific breach of service conditions after 45 years of peaceful possession. Proving a breach after such a long time is a daunting task.
Yes, and then there's the question of limitation and long peaceful possession. Does the delay in filing the suit and the long period of peaceful possession by the Donis affect the plaintiff's right to seek resumption of the gifted property? This involves the principle of laches, which essentially means delaying the assertion of a legal right to the detriment of another party.
Finally, the court had to interpret the services condition in the gift deed. Should it be interpreted as perpetual services or limited to the donor's lifetime? This interpretation must be consistent with constitutional principles and practical circumstances.
Let's delve into the court's reasoning. They took a very comprehensive approach, considering historical context, legal principles, and constitutional implications. Firstly, they analyzed the historical context of the 1953 land transfer. They recognized that land reforms were a crucial factor in India's post-independence period, and many landowners were using gifts to retain control of their property while adhering to land ceiling laws. This understanding helped the court interpret the true nature of the transaction beyond its superficial characterization as a conditional gift.
Secondly, the court examined the legal validity of the service conditions. They acknowledged that the Transfer of Property Act, TPA, was not applicable in Punjab in 1953, but held that principles of justice, equity, and good conscience would still apply. They analyzed sections 126 and 127 of the TPA, which deal with revocation of gifts and onerous gifts.
Here, the court made a crucial point. Even if the gift was considered an onerous gift, the condition of perpetual service by successive generations was deemed unconscionable and amounting to forced labor, violating fundamental rights under Articles 14, 21, and 23 of the Constitution.
The court also highlighted the plaintiff's failure to discharge their burden of proof. They argued that neither the plaint nor witness testimony specified the nature of services required or how they were breached. The court found that the defendants produced evidence showing the plaintiffs had left the village shortly after the donor's death, making service impossible.
This case highlights the importance of specific and concrete evidence when challenging long-held possessions. In cases seeking resumption of property after such a long period, courts expect plaintiffs to present strong evidence.
The court further considered the impact of the defendant's 45-year peaceful possession. Drawing from precedents like the Privy Council decision in Forbes v. Mir Muhammad Tuki, the court reasoned that where grantees have enjoyed long, uninterrupted possession and cultivation, courts should construe agreements favorably toward maintaining such possession. This highlights the significance of peaceful possession as a factor in determining legal rights.
In this case, the court also focused on the delay in filing the suit. This delay, approximately 45 years after the gift's execution and 20 years after the last original donee's death, weighed heavily against the plaintiff's claims. This points towards the principle of laches, emphasizing the importance of timely legal action.
Finally, the court interpreted the gift conditions purposively. They reasoned that services mentioned in the deed could only reasonably refer to past services rendered, or at most, services to be rendered to the original donor during his lifetime. They found that the immediate transfer of possession indicated a complete transfer of interest rather than a conditional arrangement. This interpretation was deemed necessary to avoid reading unconstitutional conditions of perpetual service into the gift deed.
The court's decision upheld the High Court's dismissal of the suit. The plaintiffs failed to establish valid grounds for revocation of the 1953 gift deed. The condition of perpetual services was declared unconstitutional, and the defendant's peaceful possession of the gifted land for over 45 years remains undisturbed. This case has several important implications. Firstly, it emphasizes the role of historical context in interpreting legal agreements. The court's understanding of land reforms in Punjab was instrumental in determining the true nature of the gift.
Secondly, this case reinforces the principle of laches, highlighting the importance of timely legal action. The significant delay in filing the suit negatively impacted the plaintiff's case.
Thirdly, this case reiterates the limitations on onerous gifts and the importance of avoiding unconscionable conditions that could amount to forced labor.
This judgment also provides guidance on interpreting conditions within gift deeds, particularly those concerning services. The court's emphasis on a purposive interpretation aligns with ensuring constitutional validity and practicality.
It's important to note that this judgment, like most, is based on specific facts and circumstances. While it provides valuable legal guidance, it's crucial to consult legal professionals for tailored advice on specific situations.
This case highlights the complexities of property law, particularly when historical context, constitutional principles, and equitable considerations come into play. We hope our discussion has shed light on this fascinating and important judgment.
And that wraps up our analysis of today's judgments. We hope you found our discussion informative and engaging.
Before we sign off, we'd like to remind our listeners once again to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue bringing you daily updates on the most important legal decisions.
Absolutely. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another exciting episode. Until then, this is Priya Sharma.
And Arjun Gupta, signing off. Thanks for listening to the Ask Junior Daily Judgment Podcast.